Hello and welcome back to the Second and Short College Football Show. We have officially reached college football week 8. We are over the halfway point through October, meaning we're also well over the halfway point of college football season, but it really starts heating up now. Obviously, the last couple of weeks, we've gotten some fantastic games, some fantastic football. This week, it continues. We've got a bunch of big matchups, got a ton of things to talk about. Before we get into anything, make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube and you turn on those post notifications. Make sure you like the video, and I'll give you something to comment as we go through. Make sure you follow us on Instagram to make sure you're staying up to date on everything we've got going on at Second and Short. Join the Second and Short subreddit, r/2ndand short. If you've never watched the Second and Short College Football Show, first we start off with some of the biggest headlines around college football. Then we will get into my top 10 heading into week 8. That will be followed by the top matchups of the week. That'll be followed by some ones to watch. And finally, we will close it out with the week 8 picks. Last week, we went 2-1 with our college football picks, putting us to 10-5 on the season. Got to make sure you're sticking around for the end of the video for that, because I'm really liking the picks this week as well. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the biggest headlines from around college football. We'll start off with a big one, that being the Big Ten and SEC starting some discussions over a scheduling agreement. This agreement would focus on, obviously, revenue generation for the two conferences, but also on securing college football playoff spots. The format of this would likely be something similar to college basketball with the conference challenges. We would see 12 to 16 Big Ten SEC challenge games, or obviously some different kind of name, but that's how we see it in college basketball. This is obviously an effort to make sure that these teams are having good strength of schedule as we go into this expanded playoff era that definitely changes the way that teams are viewed on a grander scale. Our next big headline is that Army and Navy have both made it into the AP Top 25 for the first time since 1960. The rival programs are both off to undefeated starts and are looking at potentially matching up twice this season, once in the American Athletic Conference Championship and once again in the Army-Navy game. We're looking at a potential spot where these two teams could be playing for the Group of 5 bid in college football, but there's a number of other Group of 5 teams they'll have to get through first. Next big thing we've got is that LSU was fined $250,000 for storming the field in their overtime victory over Ole Miss in the Magnolia Bowl. And I don't have a problem at all with them storming the field, but was it necessarily needed? I understand it was an overtime win in a rivalry game, but you were pretty evenly ranked, number 9 and number 13, pretty evenly matched teams up and down. And when you look at the history of this matchup, the last 10 times that these teams have faced off, LSU's won 7 of them. So once again, I don't have a problem with them storming the field necessarily. I just don't know if it was worth $250,000 fine to your program. Nonetheless, let the kids have fun. Who cares? We've got a little bit of quarterback news that came out primarily on the injuries side. First being the injury to Graham Mertz. He tore his ACL and will miss the remainder of the season for Florida, meaning that freshman DJ Lagway will fully take over the starting spot. The other big quarterback news is that Cam Rising will once again miss the remainder of the season for Utah. Between the recovery from his ACL tear last year, a lacerated finger that he suffered a few weeks ago, and now a lower leg injury that he suffered against Arizona State, Utah and Cam Rising have decided it is best if he sits out for the remainder of the season. Now, this does open the door for another medical redshirt for Cam Rising, which would put him into his 8th year of college football. He would likely be eligible for this second medical redshirt because he hasn't yet played 4 games this season. According to Coach Kyle Whittingham, it seems like those conversations are much more for down the road. As of right now, they're just focused on what they can do with Isaac Wilson taking over at quarterback. All right, that is all the headlines for today. Let's get into my top 10 heading into week 8. At number 1, I've got Texas holding on to their spot after a blowout win in the Red River rivalry. At number 2, I've got Oregon taking over Ohio State's spot after their 1-point victory over the Buckeyes. Once again, I might get some hate for this one. I'm keeping Ohio State up here and putting them at 3. It was a 1-point loss, and it was really just because of like 2 bad decisions right in the last few seconds of the game that caused them to lose this game. With a little bit better clock management, they likely would have won this game on a field goal. Losing to Oregon by 1 point as opposed to Penn State, who hasn't really done anything against anybody, definitely looks better for Ohio State. So keeping Ohio State up here at the top, just putting them at 3. and I'll let Penn State sit at 4. Then I have Georgia coming in at 5. I know last week I had Penn State still behind Georgia. I'm going to just give Penn State the week this week. Penn State was still a little bit shaky, but they did have a huge offensive performance this week from Drew Aller, which does kind of start to push me towards them being a little bit better than I thought they were. I've got Georgia coming in at 5 just because that loss to Alabama is not quite looking as good as it did at the time with their loss and then their close victory over South Carolina. So UGA falls to 5. Then at number 6, I've got Miami. Number 7, I've got the Clemson Tigers. At number 8, dropping just one spot, is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Then at number 9, I've got Iowa State. And at number 10, I've got BYU. The Iowa State and BYU picks might take a little bit of explaining, but it really just comes down to the fact that both of them are undefeated. They look like the favorites in the Big 12 right now. And there's a lot of one-loss teams out there that have not looked as good as these two. My first 4 out are LSU, Notre Dame, Tennessee, and then Texas A&M. I will admit Boise State and Indiana are extremely close to being in that first 4 out, but I think when it comes to quality of opponents that they've faced, the other 4 just have a better claim to it. All right, that does it for my top 10 heading into Week 8. Let's talk about the top matchups in Week 8. Let's start off with Nebraska heading on the road to number 16, Indiana. Indiana is super hot right now, and Indiana's on a path right now that could potentially put them going on the road to Columbus, undefeated in their second to last game of the year to take on Ohio State for a spot in the Big Ten championship game. The only thing is that this path is not easy, but Indiana starts this path right here against Nebraska. And this is a good team to kind of get an idea of where Indiana is at on the grand scale of college football. Nebraska's got a great defense. They're allowing less than 190 passing yards per game. Meanwhile, on Indiana's side, Curtis Rourke is fighting for a seat in New York at the end of the year. And a huge part of that is that Indiana is passing for 315 yards per game. And their running game has been almost as good. They're rushing for 200 yards per game, and they have 23 rushing touchdowns to this point. The only issue for the running game is that Nebraska's got one of the best run defenses in college football. The Huskers' run defense has only allowed 84 rushing yards per game and is still yet to allow a rushing touchdown this season. When it comes down to my pick, I think I'm going to have to roll with the Hoosiers. I really like them. I like watching Curtis Rourke. I think when it comes to the versatility of this offense, that's what gives them the leg up against Nebraska. They've shown me they can score. They've shown me they can win. Give me the Hoosiers. On to our next matchup. It's a big one in the Big Ten. It's a ranked versus ranked matchup. Number 24, Michigan, on the road at number 22, Illinois. The Wolverines are heading to Champaign with an offense that flat out can't score. Michigan's offense is only scoring 23.5 points per game. Meanwhile, they're allowing 22 points per game. They also have no big play ability in the passing game because they can't throw the ball at all. And really, they aren't even that good at running when you look at the grand scheme of college football. This team that's based on their running offense is 39th in the nation in rushing yards per game. And their elite defense heading into the year is 110th in passing yards allowed per game. Now, I'm not going to take away the fact that they can stop the run. They have the 3rd best rushing defense in college football, but there's a lot of holes in this Michigan team, and they don't match up well against Illinois. Now, the Illini can't defend the run nearly as well as the Wolverines, but I think with the passing game that Illinois has with Luke Altmaier, they have a huge opportunity here to capitalize on how bad this Michigan secondary's looked and go and grab a win in a huge matchup for themselves. I'm going to side with the Fighting Illini and Luke Altmaier here because I really think he's going to be the difference maker. So give me the Illini taking down the reigning national champions. At the start of the episode, we talked about how we are over the halfway point through October, which means we're coming up on the 3rd Saturday in October, and we all know what that means. Alabama versus Tennessee. The number 7 Crimson Tide heading to Neyland Stadium to take on the number 11 Volunteers. This is a super weird scenario for this matchup. We don't typically see both of these teams struggling when they come into this game, and it's really just about who's going to get out of the rut first. The last 2 weeks, both teams lost to unranked teams, then followed it up with a win in the final seconds of the game against 2 more unranked teams. It's really just up to who can make the adjustments week after week. And personally, I still assume that Alabama is capable of it. I do still have faith in Kalen DeBoer, and I've got faith in Josh Heupel. But there's been a lot of oddities when it comes to this Tennessee offense. These last 3 games, I just don't know what Tennessee is doing on the offensive side. Meanwhile, Alabama is still putting up points. Yeah, last week wasn't a great offensive performance, but even against Vandy, they put up numbers in the 30s. Against UGA, they put up a ton of numbers. So Alabama's not having a problem as much on offense. It's just about game management and a little bit on the defensive side as well. And in a game like this, I feel like there's no use in really bringing up stats. This one's all off vibes for me. It's really just down to one coach, and one team is going to figure this stuff out, and the other one's not. I will say Tennessee has a couple of advantages on their side. The biggest thing is that Heupel has been here before. He's played this matchup a couple of times now. He's already won it, so that monkey is off your back. And then, of course, he also has the home field advantage playing at Neyland Stadium, which is one of the biggest in the country. You do get the added benefit of playing there. The issue for Tennessee is that Bama has shown me at least some good offense a couple of times, and I think they showed me a little bit of resiliency in a lot of these games. I guess for now, for the pick, I'm going to take Bama as of right now, just because I'm not sure what Heupel's got going on with his offense. Our final and our biggest matchup of the week, number 5, Georgia, heading on the road, taking on the number 1, Texas Longhorns. This game is going to be the first time since the season opener in 2021 where Georgia is a true underdog. As of right now, Texas is favored by 3.5 points in this matchup. And honestly, I have no clue what to think about this game. These two teams are kind of odd to me. Obviously, Texas is just rolling through opponents as we've seen thus far, and Georgia obviously got tripped up by Alabama, but seems like they're right back on the right track. Part of me wants Texas to lose just to feed into the insanity that has been the SEC this year, but at the same time, I can't live in a world where 2 Big Ten teams occupy the top 2 spots, and one of them could be Penn State. I simply just don't want to accept that reality. And for Georgia, they've just been so hit or miss on the offense. I think the thing that's clear to me watching Georgia is that they're missing the Brock Bowers type of contributor that they had the last couple of years, and a number of other players they've had over the many years that they've been really dominating with Kirby Smart. They don't have that one guy on the team that you know is going to go out there and put up, 100 receiving yards and a touchdown, and then just leave it up to everybody else to fill their role. Somebody else is stepping up every week, and it makes things a little bit tougher on Carson Beck when he doesn't know what wide receiver or tight end or whatnot is going to be leading the way in his offense. So what I'm looking for is consistency out of Carson Beck if Georgia wants to win. That's the biggest thing. Carson Beck can't come out like he did against Alabama. On the Texas side, I need Ewers to look a little bit more healthy. There were a couple times in that Oklahoma game where he just looked a little bit shaky, wasn't maybe 100%. If we see a 100% Quinn Ewers, there's a good chance Texas takes this game. And as of right now, I think I'm going to go with Texas. I probably will change my mind about 10 different times for the rest of this week. But right now, as it stands, while I'm sitting here at the desk, I'm taking Texas. All right, those are your top matchups of the week. Let's head into some ones to watch. First game that we're going to be watching is number 12 Notre Dame heading to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This one is a neutral site game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and yes, Notre Dame is an 11-point favorite, but Georgia Tech doesn't mind being the underdog in these kind of matchups. Tech is a huge fan of upsetting the big dogs, and Notre Dame is trying to fight for a spot in the top 10 right now, and a victory here in blowout fashion could seal the deal for one of those top spots. So I really don't have much else to say about this game. We're going to talk about it in the picks section, but for now, I think it's just one to keep your eyes on. We saw the Notre Dame offense turn things up last week against Stanford, Riley Leonard deciding to be a real quarterback, and Georgia Tech has just kind of sat around and continued to roll after the victory against Florida State to open the season. My next game, another ACC matchup, just because the ACC has been ridiculous. Going number 6 Miami, heading on the road to Louisville. Really, this game is just me daring Miami to win by a touchdown. Right now, they're 4-point favorites, but these last 2 games, they've played much less competent teams than Louisville, and they've barely scraped up wins in very close games, very high scoring, really bad defensive showings from Miami. I dare them to win by a touchdown here against this Louisville team. I'm thinking this one's going to be a fun one. I'm just looking for more ACC madness out of these two. Now, our next game, maybe one that wasn't on your radar this week, Arizona State playing Cincinnati. I really just think this is like a sneaky-ass good game. Yeah, they're both unranked right now. Honestly, both of these teams could be fighting for a top 25 spot with a victory here, probably more on the Arizona State side. And for Arizona State, you're coming off of a victory against Utah, and also, Cam Scatabo is an animal at running back. Absolutely love watching him this season. Excited to watch him play against Cincinnati. And on Cincinnati's side, Brendan Sorsby has been leading a Bearcats offense that has been unreal. This team I thought was going to be really bad this year, but Sorsby and this Bearcats offense are 23rd in the nation this season in yards per game. Now, on to our final one to watch. This one is going to be a mess. I'll just say that. New Mexico versus Utah State. Now, don't freak out yet. Don't skip past this yet. It is definitely one to watch. These teams suck. Don't even question it. Yes, I'm aware these teams suck, but look at the total. Over, under 78.5 points. Tell me that doesn't sound like a damn good time. You've got the number 26 and number 19 team, respectively, in the nation in total yards per game. They are also 131st and 130th, respectively, in total yards allowed per game. Both of these teams allowing about 500 yards of offense to their opponents every game. But don't worry about the defense. We're here to enjoy the offense. It's gonna be high scoring. It's going to be close, and it is going to be the most disgusting, no good football game you've ever watched, and I say that in the best way possible. You got to watch New Mexico versus Utah State. Now, on to the Week 8 picks. Before we get into anything, I would like to remind everybody, once again, I will not be placing any wagers on these picks. I do not live in a gambling state, though I am 21 years of age. I'm also not telling anybody that they should be making these picks. It's just the ones that I like when I look at the boards. If you do have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, our first pick is Notre Dame -11 against Georgia Tech. And I know I talked about how Georgia Tech likes to upset teams in these spots, but there's a lot more convincing evidence on the Notre Dame side, especially under Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman just loves to cover. He is 29-15-1 against the spread in his career with Notre Dame, and that puts him at a 65.9% against the spread. And among coaches with a minimum of 40 games coached, that's the best since 1990. And under Marcus Freeman, in road and neutral games, they're 15-6 against the spread. So give me the Fighting Irish to cover that 11-point spread against Georgia Tech. My next one, we're looking for offense. Miami versus Louisville is where it's at. Over 60.5. The number 60.5 might give you some nightmares if you rode with me last week on Boise State, Hawaii. That was a tough one, but we're getting back on track here with Miami-Louisville. Both of these teams just have the innate ability to score points. When you pair Miami's track record these last couple of weeks with Louisville's offensive ability, it just looks like there's going to be a lot of points scored in this matchup. This Louisville offense is yet to put up less than 24 points in a game, and both times they put up 24 was in their losses. And Miami is yet to put up less than 38 points. Both of these teams' defenses have been struggling the last couple of weeks. This just seems right. Obviously, if we look at those minimums, you add them up, yeah, we hit the over, but I think we might even clear it by even more. I'm looking at this game being another both teams in the mid-30s like what Miami's faced these last two games. So I'm throwing the over on the bet slip. And for my final pick, I am taking Oklahoma money line against South Carolina. As of right now, the odds looking at about -140 to Oklahoma's side. And I know I haven't been the highest on Oklahoma, and last week they got stomped by Texas, but historically, they are really good coming off the Red River rivalry, especially when they're coming off of a loss to Texas. Since 2000, this team is 23-2 straight up coming off the Red River rivalry. And when they're at home after that matchup, they're 12-1 straight up. And then when you look at when they're coming off the loss against Texas, since 1999, they're 9-0 straight up in that scenario. I'm going to follow the patterns. I'm going to follow the data. I'm going to take Oklahoma money line to round out the week 3 picks. Hopefully, when I talk to you guys next week, we'll be looking at 13-5. Those are my picks heading into week 8. Before you get out of here, make sure you like and subscribe. Comment on this video who you think is going to win Georgia, or Texas. Obviously, make sure you're following us on Instagram to stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Second and Short. Make sure you join that Second and Short subreddit, r/2ND short. And finally, thank you all for joining me once again. Make sure you're listening to the podcast Mondays and Fridays, and make sure you're coming back here every week on Thursdays for the Second and Short College Football Show. Enjoy the football this weekend. I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.